This is the recording on Zoom, and now I'm going to try to go live. Let's see if that works. Takes a minute. Yes, and it seems that we are live. I'm going to wait a few more seconds. Yep, welcome everyone. I'm going to double check just to see if the technique is not leaving us behind, because crazy things are happening lately. And welcome here at a live stream together with Jeroen and David Icke. And we're going to go into the case for coming Friday, Dutch time, 11 in the morning. Then we're going to be in court. What did you say, Jeroen?
12 in the morning.
Is it at 12? I thought it was 11 in the morning.
I don't think so. It's 12.
Yes, I think it's 11. Well, there better be early than late, Jeroen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with a short update, especially for those viewers who are relatively new in the case. What happened is that on the 6th of November, so that's about 1 month ago, we were organizing a demonstration with an organization that is called in Dutch Together for the Netherlands, Samen voor Nederland. And David Icke was invited to speak at this peace rally. And then it turned out, as soon as we started calling his name, that people started talking about everything except about the peace rally. It was all about David Icke and what he was thinking about Jewish people, and he was a Holocaust denier. Now, personally, I have a Jewish background, so I'm pretty sensitive for Holocaust denial. But having said that, I do think that everyone has the right to deny the Holocaust if they want to. The only difference is that I would not work together with those people to give them a stage, but that's my personal opinion. But if you want to deny the Holocaust, according to me, you're totally free and entitled to do so. That's your freedom of speech and your freedom of thinking. I know a lot of people think differently about this, but because I'm part of the organization, I invited David for a live stream, and I just asked him, do you believe that the Holocaust took place? And to my own surprise, he said, absolutely. Do you believe that a lot of Jewish people were systematically killed by the Nazis? And then he said something very interesting. He said, well, I actually never think that the Nazis went away. They actually just changed suits. And I was very surprised about this answer. And I said, okay, so how come that a lot of organizations, such as CD here in the Netherlands, which is the Center of Information and Documentation about Israel, who started calling David Icke a Holocaust denial in the first place, why are those people accusing you of Holocaust denial? And then David said something very interesting. If you start calling me a denier of anything, you do not have to talk with me anymore. And Jeroen is here from the organization of Virus Waarheid, and that's exactly what started to happen with Willem Engel and with Jeroen. They were supposed to be the deniers of the virus of corona. What happened then is that the city got so stressed of David Icke coming to the Netherlands that they actually asked the city hall of the city of Amsterdam, where the demonstration would take place, to see if it was possible to forbid David to come and speak. So this was all about David speaking at a peace rally. I remind you, at a peace rally, it was not about corona, it was not about anything else, it was about peace. Especially, of course, because of the war, Russia-Ukraine. What then happened is that the City Hall of Amsterdam asked the immigration service to see if it was possible to deny, or at least to forbid David to come to Holland. And what then happened is that the immigration service, they went to the Ministry of Justice and they allowed them to forbid David to come. And they did it even worse. They actually put him on the SIS2 list, which is the Schengen agreement, and David is not allowed to enter 26 countries, including the Netherlands, for the coming, pay attention, 24 months. By now, we also know that, for example, the United States and countries like Romania take over that verdict, and that means that you're basically locked up in your own country for 24 months. And this was all about speaking at a peace rally on the 6th of November. What then happened is we tried to start a law case But there was no more time because David was told that he wasn't able to speak at the rally on the 4th of November at 6 o'clock in the afternoon. So how are you going to start a law case within one day? Impossible. So we took some more time, and now the law case is taking place, and it's coming up on Friday morning. Is it 11 o'clock, Jeroen?
11 o'clock. I didn't want to confuse people, but yeah, you're right. It's 11.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So there is a lot to talk about, and we will see how long this live stream will go on. It is recorded. We are going to put it on freedavidicke.eu. Please sign the petition if you haven't done by now. We're going to show all the signatures. We're not going to give them the email addresses, by the way. We're going to show them the names. We're not going to give them any email addresses, but we're going to show that David is not alone in this case. And by now we already have more than 50,000 online signatures. Now there's a lot to talk about. It's getting crazier and crazier, but I want to hear from you, David. What do you think about what has been going on? What has been the impact for you? And what do you, how do you see all this?
Well, it's kind of bewildering. You know, you get invited to speak at a peace rally in Amsterdam and you find yourself walking bewildered around a kindergarten with the greatest respect to little children. It's just an extraordinary thing. And people might just turn this the other way and just ask a question. Why are they so frightened of me? You know, if you look at my background and my philosophy on life, it's that we're all one consciousness having different experiences. And the labels of a human life, of race and culture and income bracket and sexuality and religion, these are all experiences, but we are the consciousness having them. And in the end, we're all the same consciousness. Now, whether people go with that or not is up to them. But what it means is the whole idea that you judge people by their culture, their background, or their racial nature, it cannot play any part in a philosophy like that. So they might then ask, why are they using this to stop him speaking? I mean, what would I have done, Mordechai? I'd have come in, I'd have spoken for 20 minutes to half an hour, and I'd have come home. But for some reason, they have just gone hysterical. But it also is something that, you know, the Netherlands is becoming absolutely a test case in so many ways for what is going on globally. Because you can look at what's been done to me, 26 countries and a lot more, as you say, I can't go into, for accepting an invitation to speak at a peace rally. And people will say, you know, if they any reasonable way of looking at the world, that is ridiculous and silly and way over the top. But then look what Rutte and co are doing to Dutch farmers. I mean, how over the top and extreme is that? And, you know, those that speak out and won't just accept and obey and keep their head down and just keep their mouths shut, those that do that are obviously going to be targeted first. It's like the people that were challenging the Dutch lockdowns were targeted horrendously on many occasions by the brutal Dutch police. But what you find, and it's like that wonderful expression of this whole theme that I'm talking about by a German pastor called Niemöller in Germany, who was talking about the experience with the Nazis. And he talked about first they came for the trade unionists. I wasn't a trade unionist, so I did nothing. Then they came for the communists. I wasn't a communist and I did nothing. Then they came for the Jews and I was not a Jew, so I did nothing. Then they came for me and there was no one left to speak out for me. And this is how it works. They pick off. What they do is they demonize either an individual or a section of society. and they turn the rest of society against them. So they have, the authorities have support from a lot of the population to demonize and silence the target group. But when that's done, they come for the next group and the next group. So I would say to people in the Netherlands, everywhere else actually, that they may come for me now, but they'll come for you tomorrow. And if you look at what's happening in New Zealand currently, where the state have taken a baby from his parents because they wanted to have a blood transfusion for the baby that does not include blood that had been subjected to the COVID fake vaccine, and they've taken their child away to do it, to force it, when there were people there who were quite happy to non-fake vaccinated people who were quite happy to donate their blood for it to happen, but that was turned down by the state. So it's that situation today because it's someone, the parents, who stood up and said, we don't want to do this. But it will be all parents eventually, because what we're seeing, for instance, is the erosion of power and influence by parents over their children being replaced by the state. So once again, they go for the people that stand up first, but they come for the rest tomorrow. So, you know, when people say it's okay to stop someone's freedom of speech, all right, because why do you want to stop my freedom of speech? Well, I don't agree with what you're saying. Okay, but when they come and knock on your door or they take away your social media account and say, you can't say this anymore, I mean, what about that? You know, because that's what happens. If you look at the censorship on social media, I watched it unfold. It started off where they targeted people like me with demonetization, because they looked and they said, how do these people do this full time? And not for me, I write books, but for many people, it was a monetization of YouTube videos. So they said, right, we'll have that first, so the demonetization. And then it came what they call shadow banning, where they just stopped people seeing it. And eventually what happened, they just deleted people's channels and deleted people's ability to communicate. It's a process. It's what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. And we have to decide where we're going to draw the line in the sand. Now or down the road when they're knocking on your door and deleting your accounts for saying things that are far milder than I'm saying.
Yeah. So to get into this about to demonetize, how do you say that?
Demonetization, yeah.
Demonetization. Viruswaarheid is actually now not able to receive any more donations. And that was the only way they were able to start law cases. Can you say anything about that, Jeroen? Because how is Viruswaarheid now? You're not able to get any more money in, so you have to stop.
Yes, we gave a press conference last month that we now are obligated to stop because they canceled our bank accounts. We had 3 court cases against the bank, and a bank, of course, is a part in partnership with the government. 2 times we won the case because the judge said that if our bank account would be cancelled, it would not be possible to participate in the community, and our supporters would be silenced. So this was very correct 2 times. And the 3rd court case, we were surprised that they continued with the case because there were 2 prior cases which we won. And then well, not really to our surprise, this time we lost. And our bank account has been cancelled last week or the week before, I believe. So this means we can't function anymore. And this, of course, is the last in a long row of sabotage of our activities. I calculated this morning together with Willem how many court cases we did. We came up to 42 cases we did in 30 months. So we are very proud of what we did, and we collected a lot of information, a lot of evidence. All these court cases have proven our case. So on one side, it's sad that we have to stop, but on the other side, all the information is on the table right now, and it's up to the people to do something with that, because we can only hand the information, but we cannot save the people. That's what the people have to do themselves. And at this moment, there are so many new organizations and so many new people who are distributing, and it's like an avalanche of information at the moment. So putting us away, stopping us is not gonna end the flow of information. So I think we did our part at this moment, and it will continue with other people. Another reason, of course, is that we are being criminalized. Willem has been prosecuted, and they are also threatening to prosecute the people behind the scenes who are supporting him. This was for us the reason to stop, at least in organized form, and to continue our activities. Yes.
You mean that those are the volunteers, no? That are working behind?
Yes. Yeah. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
So if we bring it to Friday, I know, Jeroen, you have a lot of experience. I was sharing the information a little bit with David with Fort Oranje. And you have seen this coming all those years.
Yes.
When Corona
Absolutely.
started, you were one of the first when Corona started that you started seeing signs that were very similar to something that you are working on for many years. Can you share this information?
Yes. The last 10 years, or is it even more now? It really started in 2007. No, 2000 it started. We are almost 20 years. I'm sorry, the time is passing quickly. No, what I did, they were with secret organization on it. I call it the shadow government. Yes. And we found out that things were very fishy, that things which are happening, it didn't fit with my legal knowledge. What they do, they cooperated, all the government organizations, they cooperated, and their plan was to take away all our capital, all our possessions. We are talking about a camping which had 24 hectares, and they had 3 following projects trying to destroy our business and to take away our property. They never managed because we stood up in court. I cannot even count the amount of court cases we did against all participants, but they didn't manage. So every project, they overreached more. And the last project was really coordinated by the ministers, by the government, the minister himself. And even that didn't succeed yet. I mean, they destroyed all camping without any power. But at this moment, we are still in court, and the case is so ridiculous. We made 10 hours of, in 10 hours, I explained what happened there. We made a show of it. And the next few months, there will be more court cases. But this is why I recognized when it happened in March 2020, because the camping was like an experiment. Everything they did during the Corona time, they tried with us. So this means controlling the media, abusing power, but even the corruption. The corruption we found there, it's incredible. So yes, we have a lot of experience, and we were telling the people, listen, there's something going on in this country which is very, very bad. Nobody didn't want to listen. They didn't want to listen because they said, "Oh, we are such a nice and fine country, and things like this don't happen." But we see now they do happen, And it's even worse than our worst imagination. Because even for me, I knew this was big, but I could never imagine that it was this big. So yes.
Yeah, if you look at Friday, because we will go into the case a little bit more later on, but if you look at Friday, some people have spoken out, and those are not the lead people. We have seen that a professor, Jan Brouwer, he wrote a whole article about what is going on with David, and that the immigration service is actually being used and being misused by the government to just silence someone up. Another person, this is Dagmar Oudshoorn, she is the CEO of Amnesty here in Holland. She actually said exactly the same. You're not supposed to limit the demonstration law, which we have here in Holland, with something that they are doing. How do you look to Friday and with everything that you have seen happening over the last few weeks in their defense?
Yeah, I think what they did was a bridge too far. This is how they do things. They experiment, they see what is going to be the reaction, and if nobody says something, it's going to be in the protocol. And next time they're going to ban everybody to enter the EU if they don't like your opinion. So in this case, many people spoke out. There were also articles in a newspaper, and Jan Brouwer is a very important one because he's a specialist in this field, the right to demonstrate and freedom of speech. He's from the University of Groningen, and he was in the beginning of the crisis in 2020. He was totally on our side. He turned around. We cannot really estimate what happened to him, but he refused after that to speak out because he compared the situation with the 30s, the 30s in Germany, in the first opinions he gave back then in 2020. After that, we didn't hear him anymore, and this is the first time he said, I know also from people who know him, he said, this case of David Icke must be fought. This cannot stand. So we have a lot of support on the background. So, people are afraid to speak out. So it's a big step that more than one spoke out. And Amnesty is also quite a surprise because until now, they didn't say so much. We were in touch with them very much. We put a lot of pressure on them. And when I spoke to them before about these demonstrations which ended very violently by police force, they said, no, Holland is a great country and things like this don't happen. So it's a big step, at least they speak out, but it's probably also to save face a little bit because I think they lost a lot of support during this last 2.5, 3 years. Yes.
Yeah. So they're trying to make up a little bit, you think?
Probably, yes.
So David, you were actually planning. We were making everything ready for you to be part of this on Friday, to be there live. And we actually had the verdict, first of all, from the immigration service. They said, no, he's not allowed to come. So Jeroen went actually to the court and said, well, he is supposed to come. And even a lot of cases in the past where people were actually charged for criminal actions were allowed to stand there live, because we now know, and there's a lot of documents proving this, that being there live makes a lot of difference instead of being there online, especially when there is a language difference. How do you look at it, the fact that you're not allowed to be there on Friday?
Well, there's a few things, really. First of all, I think it's a sign of the times that when the government, in effect, said, no, I can't come, and you went to the judge, it's a sign of the times that I was sure the judge would say no. Because what is happening here is, in a balanced society, different elements of society, different elements of authority have to be independent of each other, so that there's an independent judiciary that through which government excesses can be challenged. But what we've seen more and more, and you mentioned the shadow government, that's exactly what we're talking about. And it's global. I call it the global cult. where they are deleting the lines between different elements of the system. So the system starts to move and talk and act as one unit. And if you look at the COVID era, if you look at what happened to me in terms of the most overwhelmingly, most of the Dutch media, if you look at the human-caused climate change, allegedly, big time allegedly, and you look at what's happening in Ukraine, you see all over the world different elements of the system all speaking with the same tone. Whether it's the media, the mainstream media, they are going with the government narrative, and you've got Silicon Valley censoring in line with these narratives to stop them being challenged. And you know, the world that we experience can only be understood if you grasp that there is this network, call it a shadow government, global cult, that is operating behind the scenes and is basically the cement that's connecting, on the face of it, totally unconnected institutions, countries, people, organizations. So, I mean, I've experienced this whole thing for a very long time. And so when you realize that this cult shadow government controls national government, it's got its tentacles into the judiciary and into corporations and into the medical system through the World Health Organization. And it's got its tentacles into big pharma and into the regulatory agencies that's supposed to defend us from big pharma, but of course don't. And so you start to realize it's when you are censored by Silicon Valley, and then PayPal or a bank or whatever says, we're going to delete your account or stop you having a means of receiving money. It seems like what's happening, but it's simple what's happening, that they're different elements of the same network. If you go deep enough into PayPal, you hit this network. Deep enough into Facebook and Google, you hit this network. Into the banking system in the Netherlands, you hit this network. So they're all moving as one unit. So it's understanding this underlying collusion that brings to the surface what's going on. And this is why you look at the G20 and they move as one unit. Vaccine passports, one unit. Digital currency, one unit. Because it's centrally coordinated. And the more that time has moved on, the more power they've got at the center to gather control of more and more organizations. And what we're seeing now is, on one level, we're seeing them get confident enough to say, well, if we show you what we're doing, what are you going to do about it? But on the other hand, there's another way of looking at this, that they also know this shadow government behind all this. This is the shadow government behind targeting the farmers in the Netherlands and now targeting the farmers in Germany in the same way. They know that they are, for all their apparent power, they are hanging by a thread. And that thread is mathematics. There's a population of 8 billion. And there is, compared with that number, a comparative handful of them. And they know that if enough of the 8 billion wake up to what's going on and then stop cooperating with it, it's game over. They know that. And so they are, their goal, their bottom line to stop that happening is they must control the perceptions of the population. So the population won't actually see what's happening until it's too late and everything's stitched up. And so how do you control the perceptions of the population? You control what the population hear from which they form their perceptions. I said a long time ago that the plan is eventually, if we allow it, that no one ever hears or sees anything that is not approved by the authorities. And of course, we're moving that way. So you start to see the fear part of this shadow government. When they run the government in the Netherlands on behalf of Schwab, who's a front man for this cult. They basically run the judiciary, they run the corporations, they run the health system, they run the United Nations, they run the World Health Organization, they run the IMF. But then they go into absolute panic mode over one bloke coming in to speak at a peace rally. And what they're frightened of is not me, they're frightened of information that will expose what's going on and give people another way of looking at the world. They know that if they can control the narrative, they'll control perception, and from perception comes behavior. So it's controlling the narrative is vital to everything they do. And the more that they are reaching their end game, the more what they're doing is put on public display, the more they have to control the narrative and stop it being exposed. Because you can manipulate below the radar, as they have decade after decade, to get all this into place. But if you're going to transform human society, there's a point where you have to do it in a way that people can see the transformation, see Dutch farmers in their situation at the moment. And once they get to that level, then they've really got to go into overdrive with censorship. Because not only have you got people saying this is really going on, people can now see it. And so from that comes control of the narrative through censorship and control of the narrative through intimidation. There's two groups that allow this to happen. One, the group that listen to what authority tells them and just believe it and act upon it without question. And the other group is that which sees some of it, doesn't want to do what authority tells it to do, but is frightened of not doing it. And those two groups have been responsible for every tyranny in history, because the tyrants, there's never enough of them. The tyrannies come in not because of the tyrants, but because of the population's acquiescence through unquestioning obedience or fear to tyrants. And the third group, what I call the renegade group, the truly renegade group, you are absolutely part of that, are those that say, I can see it, I can see what's happening, and I'm not going to cooperate with it. And they're the ones that are being targeted now, because this shadow government cult knows that that's the only group that can bring them down. The other two won't, through fear or unquestioning acquiescence. It's the renegade group that will do that. And that's why they target people like me on the scale that they do, on the ridiculous scale that they do. I mean, I was banned from Australia, still am, in 2019, after having a visa given to me to speak in 6 cities in September 2018. And I'm 4 hours from my flight leaving for Melbourne to start, when it was almost a mirror of what happened in the Dutch case. I had this long diatribe from the immigration minister in Australia, a guy called David Icke, saying all these things, including, well, we know you've been here 10 times and there's never been a problem, but you're not coming this time. And interestingly, what triggered it in Australia was a group, man and a dog group actually, called the Anti-Defamation Commission, who started off in exactly the way that City did in the Netherlands. And the same process unfolded. This is why I was watching the Dutch situation unfold, and it was almost like, oh God, not again. Because the media pick up what these groups start saying about you. They start repeating it without question. They never ask you on to put your point of view. And then you get these other groups, what I call the anti-fascist fascists and the anti-hate haters, who then pick up on that and they're virtue signaling, oh yes, we've got to stop this man. You don't know anything about this man. Oh, I do, because they told me. And then the government politicians start virtue signaling, oh, we're going to have this man. And eventually, it was almost a mirror, because the Australian authorities said to me, we know you've been here 10 times, there's never been a problem. But there's now a lot of controversy and furore that's built up about you coming. Yes, because of you, not me. So we can't let you in. And that, of course, I sat there in a hotel on the Kent coast, just waiting to come through the Channel Tunnel. And I was hearing this Dutch government email translated for me. And I'm nodding, I'm shaking my head, because I thought I've heard this all before at LA Airport in 2019 from the Australian government. It's almost mirror what happened then.
Yeah, well, it also proves your idea about this whole global thing that's actually working out to details into governments. If we look at coming Friday, Jeroen, there are some interesting things with what happened. You started preparing the case. I think it became like 8 pages, actually asking the immigration service to take David off the CIS list. They refused. That's why we're going to court. Can you say anything, and maybe not too technical, because for a lot of people it might not be able to understand. I had a lot of time reading everything and looking for all the articles. How big is the chance, like, let me ask it like this, how big would have been the chance that this would have happened, let's say 4 to 5 years ago, and that they even would make a chance? And how big are the chances now that they get away with it?
Well, it's very hard to estimate what our chances are, because what's legal is, we have seen that in so many court cases, is not of any interest anymore. It's what the government wants. But I still believe that we have a good chance, because this is a bridge too far. What I did, let me try to explain it, is the SIS2, it's a Schengen information system where all the countries from Schengen are connected, and they can signal people in this system. A couple of years ago, they changed the system, because it was SIS1 and now it's SIS2. Before it was SIS. And now the members, they don't need to put the motivation in anymore. And this is the first case with David Icke that I see a signaling without an underlying decision or an underlying, there's nothing, there's just a signaling. There was only a decision to signal him. There was nothing else. And this is quite unique. We couldn't find any earlier case, because in 2006, I was the first in the Netherlands to make more cases against the Spanish state in the Netherlands. We won all cases. Spain had to withdraw the signaling under, they had to pay a fine if they didn't, of 10,000 euro a day. Or guilders, it was that time still. It was, no, it was already euros. No, it was euro. Yeah, 10,000 euro a day. So this was the first cases I did. But what we see here is, if you look at the CIS, the treaty, it's Article 24, and it says member states can signal people if they threaten the public order. And when do they threaten the public order? They give an example: if somebody has been convicted for criminal crimes, or if they suspect that the person will commit crimes on their territory. This is not the case, because we are not talking about any suspicion or any crime committed. As far as I know, David has never been convicted for any crimes of this kind. So it's totally out of nothing that I made this signaling. So in this perspective, I couldn't find any reason why we would lose this case, but we have seen crazier stuff happening. If I come back at what you said before, David, I think the main reason why they wanted to block you entering the territory of the Netherlands is they are afraid that other people can see how big this movement is. I think this is the main reason, because they knew if you would speak, a lot of people would be attending. And then you would have a big crowd standing there. And this is the last thing they want, because it's not about anti-Semitism. It's not about Jews. This is all a distraction from where it really is. Because if you read between the lines, what is really bothering them is an anti-government attitude. And even this is not correct, because we're not talking about an anti-government attitude. We are talking about an anti-hijack of the government. Right? I mean, all of us, we don't oppose the government. We oppose the people who are hijacking the system. So this is something very different. And I think this is the main reason, and the rest is all distraction. I mean, this anti-Semitism and all of this, it's nonsense. Yeah. So everything who's speaking out against the government is now an anti-Semitism. Yeah. But their biggest worry is it's a growing movement, and they blame it on the people, the conspiracy terrorists. But in reality, we know that this movement is growing because more and more people are seeing what is happening. So they are trying to suppress it and to stop it. And they managed to sabotage the demonstration in Amsterdam, because after David didn't come, it was cancelled. So in this way, one side they managed, but on the other side, they made a big mistake, because it gave so much more publicity that the whole world knows now. Even I had people around me who don't follow anything, who don't know anything. He said, I never heard of David Icke, but now I started watch his contribution on the internet. So in a way, we must be grateful to this action, what they did. Although it's unfortunate for David, he can't move from Britain. But on the other hand, they did it as a big favor, because more people than ever now know the name of David Icke.
Have you noticed anything, David?
Oh, yes, absolutely. You reach a point, you know, if you just do what you know to be right, and you don't stop and apologize and try to defend yourself, you just keep going, bang, bang, bang. There comes a point where they really can't hurt you, because in trying to hurt you, they just confirm that you're right. And I smile so often when I see people say, he's a conspiracy theorist, he's saying this, he's saying that, and he's saying that. And what you're seeing is them confirming to you that actually that's exactly what's going on. You know, when you've got governments that are so cavalier, couldn't care less about basic freedoms. Well, that's what I'm saying. I've been saying for 30 years more and more, basic freedoms are planned to be deleted. And they don't realize that in accusing me of things and in doing things to me, they're actually confirming that I'm right. And people that have an intelligence can see that. And more people are seeing it. I mean, the numbers that look at my work now are absolutely fantastic. I mean, I couldn't fill a phone booth in 1990, in the late 1990s. I went around America talking to 8 people and stuff like that, you know, so in the 1990s. But it's not like that now, because people are starting to get it. What we need to do is get people from seeing it to ceasing to cooperate with it, because there's a massive element of this second group that doesn't want to do what authority tells it, but is frightened of not doing so. That if it could just summon the courage to move into the renegade group, the numbers would absolutely soar. And what I would say, and I'm sure you would confirm this from your own experience, if people think that standing up to this now, refusing to cooperate with it, is scary, well, you want to have a look at where this is meant to go. You know, this is a Sunday school tea party compared where it's meant to go, of total control by AI and technology, where your children and your grandchildren will have no ability to have any freedom whatsoever. I don't know if you know this, but Oxfordshire Council in England have just voted to break Oxford up in an experiment in 2024 into 15-minute sectors. And they say that everything in the 15-minute sector means everything that they say you need is within 15 minutes walk or cycle ride. And you can only leave your sector by car so many times a week. I think it's twice in the current projection anyway. And after that, you're going to be fined for leaving your sector. Now, I mean, I've been writing about this for decades, that this was coming. This is why I called this global structure they want, called the Great Reset, the Hunger Games Society, because in those movies, the population was isolated in sectors they couldn't leave, while in the so-called capital, you had the elite living in high-tech luxury, beyond luxury, while a enslaved population in sectors was serving them and had no ability of having any freedom whatsoever. Now, that may appear to be just a movie, just make-believe. It's not. That's symbolic of exactly where this is meant to go. So I say to people, are you going to say enough then? Because the longer this goes on, the harder it gets, because the more technologies we've seen in China, the more technology and AI becomes the system of control that's very difficult to overcome. So this is the time now that we really do have to look this in the eye and say here and no further. And I'll say to people in the Netherlands, as I'd say to people in Britain and America, where is your self-respect when you are allowing this man, Mark Rutte, and those around him, and of course he's just a puppet anyway, to dictate your life? It's the farmers now, it will be you tomorrow. When are you going to say enough? When is enough? And what we're looking at is the first group of unquestioning obedience. They really find it very difficult to find a point of enough. But those that can see it's not right, but are frightened of doing anything, well, they need to realize that if they're frightened now, well, stick around. And, you know, what about your kids and grandkids? Get into this renegade sector where you simply refuse to cooperate. If Rutte comes out of his political office and says, we've had a meeting and this is what's going to happen, if enough people won't cooperate, it can't happen. And, you know, I say this to the law enforcement. I mean, there's some horrific scenes of what I've seen with the farmers. To the law enforcement in the Netherlands, you've got kids and grandkids as well, and they're going to have to live in the world you are enforcing. And you take your uniform off and you'll live in that world too, because you're just a pawn of the state. You don't have power. The power's in your uniform, which is an accessory of the state. You are creating the world that you and your kids and grandkids are going to have to live in. What are you doing? Because it's a mafia. It's a global mafia. And Rutte and the Dutch royal family represent the Dutch wing of it, but that's all. We've got people in this country representing the British wing of it. And, you know, it's not meant to get better. It's meant to get ever more severe, ever more extreme. So when are you going to say enough's enough? It better be now, or you're going to regret it for the rest of your life, and your kids and grandkids even longer.
Yeah, thank you. Back to Friday, Jeroen, there was something interesting happening that they're supposed to have something like a report of the police, which they want to bring in. They want to bring it in on their behalf. But you, as defending David, you were not allowed to see it. What is this?
Yes, this is special procedure, which we know in the Netherlands that if a document is sensitive or could disclose the operation of the police or the way they work, there is a procedure that only the judge can see it, and we not. We oppose to this. What I think is the case is that that it's not only the police, it's also we got the NCTV, the National Coordinator of Terrorism and Safety. It's translated in English. It's like a semi-secret service. They don't have legal status, but they act as a secret service, an information service. They coordinate all these actions against the opposition. And I believe that also this against David Icke is coordinated by them. If you go back to the basic, and this is what I was also said to court, there's two things. First of all, we must see this document, because otherwise we cannot defend ourselves, because the facts on the base they made this decision, we don't know them. We haven't seen them. So, and I don't want to disclose them. So the second thing is the Secret Service or the state has no business in following or documenting activists. There is a very strict definition when they can intervene, and this is when people, activists, want to pursue their aim with violent action. This is not the case. We are all we like to keep peaceful and demonstrate and protest peacefully. In this case, the state has no business in interfering or documenting or whatever. They should leave you in peace. The freedom of speech is, together with the freedom to demonstrate, these are core rights of us. This is the core of a democracy. And once you start doing what they're doing now, it's a major violation of these rights, because especially if you talk about government, politicians, and everything, you have almost unlimited freedom, according to the European Court of Human Rights, to say what you want. You can call them lizards, you can call them whatever you want. The only limit is you are not allowed to call for violence against them. This is the only step you are not allowed to take. But for the rest, you can insult them, you can say whatever you want. The freedom, you have the right to shock, to awe. This is all part of our right. And to demonstrate, besides the elections every 4 years in the Netherlands, where you can put your cross, the only means to tell our governments that we disapprove is by demonstration. At the moment we lose that right, it's also the end of the democracy, because these are really core. This is the core of our democracy. So once they start taking that away, then we know we are in the post-democratic phase, and I think this is where we are entering now. But it's hopeful, at least, that some people are speaking out against this, and we will see Friday what the court is going to do, because the court has two choices. It's either they do what the state wants, but then we cannot say anymore that we are living in a democratic state of law. Or you say we disapprove and we don't allow that. But there's nothing in the middle. Right? So the court is going to decide where we stand with our democracy. So let's see what's going to happen.
Yeah. So actually, what they were actually proposing is, by giving the report to the judge, they will actually make a different playing field, because then the judge will have information that they have. Everything is based upon that report, and you are not allowed to see it, who is actually trying to defend David.
Yes, and we must have the chance to defend ourselves, to challenge this report, and especially this even more that in 2019, there was another scandal, and this was about the Islamic school. They used exactly the same recipe they are using now with David Icke, only that, of course, not with the CIS. What happened, they came with a report from the intelligence services. They made a big media circus around it, and they couldn't defend themselves. They were put away like terrorists, like Islamic fanaticism. Afterwards, these people, they're really, I don't know how many court cases they did, but they were really fighters. At the end, it came out that everything was a lie. The intelligence services lied everything which was in this secret report, which they were not allowed to see. In that case, they were lucky because it was an insider from this intelligence service who said himself he had a problem with his conscience of what was happening, and he informed them. But with this experience, we will say to the judge, we will not tolerate this, because from experience, we know that intelligence services, they don't tell the truth always. So we must be in a position to challenge this document. So it's only one choice: or they open it to both parties, or the judge has to send it back and keep it out of the procedure. There are no more choices than that.
Okay, it's going to be very interesting. So before I give the last word to David, where you can let hear your voice to the Dutch audience, actually an international audience, because I saw the call for this live also on your website. Friday morning, Dutch time, 11 o'clock. Actually, it was very interesting that the court actually asked permission to Jeroen to see if they were allowed to make a live stream so everybody can watch it, because there was a lot of interest in this case. Yeah, so this is coming Friday. We're going to place the link as soon as we have it on the Facebook pages, on the website. You, David, are going to be part of the law case Friday by Skype, because you were not allowed to enter the country. And then we're going to see what happens. So I would like to ask you to take the word and to say goodbye, according to all of us. Thank you so far.
Well, I think what you just discussed sums it up, really. And what was said earlier about law being irrelevant because governments now do whatever they want. I'm seeing that all over the world. But to have a case in which the judge is given information to try, obviously, to persuade him to go in their direction, but the defense or the challenge is not allowed to see it. How can you defend against something you can't see? It's ridiculous. And you know, as you move through the world that we've been in to the world that we're moving into, of complete control, there are these telltale signs that tell you where you're heading. I mean, that whole scenario of the judge can see the document, but the other side can't, just tells you we're moving into tyranny, because that's outrageous. And so I would say that if people, I guess if there's room, if people could get to the court and just show their support for freedom, and if there's a live stream, then, you know, you'll see, well, you might see justice at work, or you might see justice being demolished. We'll see. But these are crucial times. These are absolutely pivotal times where humanity is deciding if it wants to go down the road of freedom, or whether it wants to see the door close, so that do you think freedom's being eroded? Well, imagine a world in which freedom has gone completely. Look at China. Look at what's happening in China. Look at 400 million people under house arrest. Look at the surveillance of the population, and everything's a QR code. So if you've not got the right ticks on the QR code, you're excluded from society. And remember this, as I've been saying for decades, if you want to see what the plan is for you tomorrow, look at China today. Do you want to live in China? If you don't, well, it's time to summon some backbone, because that's what's going to happen unless we sort this out.
Okay, thank you so much. And to all listeners and viewers, see you on Friday. Thank you so much, David. And thank you, Jeroen, for everything. See you Friday.
And thanks for what you guys are doing. You've been absolutely magnificent. Talk about renegades. It's magnificent.
Thank you. Thank you.